Thank you, Rolake. And I'm just going to just ask you another question quickly, which is to say that within this idea of building better communities, more sustainable communities, and also looking at how we can ensure that we integrate across the real estate sector and the infrastructure development sector, the different viewpoints from the strategic design, from in terms of how they're connected, how they're layered up. Do you think investors really care about sustainability? Because I ask this because when you look at what we're seeing, not only in Lagos, not only in Nigeria, but even across West Africa, you realize that it's really about maximizing. So how do you know, what exactly, I think you get the question. So do investors really care, or are we really just talking to ourselves?
Okay, well, I think I want to dimension this in two ways, because, we do both hospitality and we do sort of residential real estate, although both are tied because we have a structure in our business called the rental pool. So if you're a homeowner, you can put your home on the hospitality rental pool. But so we see different types of requirements from both sides of the pond. Recently, Mixta did a large fundraising with a company, a DFI called Shelter Afrique, and we raised just in excess of $20 million for our affordable housing projects across Africa. And ESG was an absolute requirement. So for that type of investor, with that type of, this is patient capital, long-term patient capital that can go in for 7 to 10 years on an infrastructure project where you don't realize your returns until after quite a long period, also because of the cash cycle of real estate investments. ESG and sustainability were a deal breaker for them. So it's a non-starter for you if you haven't done your environmental impact assessment and provided information such as the gender composition of your boards or your directorship. So that's absolutely critical to residential real estate development, particularly in the affordable part of the spectrum, because there isn't a lot of commercial capital that's willing to invest for the long term. There's just a mismatch between our time horizon and those of those investors. If we now move to the hospitality side of the business, so one of our iconic developments is we're developers of Lakaway Lakes Golf and Country Estate. And within that business, you have our golf business, you have the hospitality business, and then you have the residential business. Now, we have several hospitality projects. For instance, we want to scale our cottages. Any of you who stayed at Lakaway may have stayed at the cottages, and the wood for those cottages were actually bought in a modular format from Bali, Indonesia. So we call them Bali-style cottages. Now, because of the FX fluctuation and the issues we've had in our supply chain, COVID has caused a lot of disruption. We're looking at how we localize that supply chain. Now, a lot of the investors we're speaking to are also foreign investors. Number one, procure local wood, right? Cure it in such a way and have it fit for purpose for the buildings the cottages that we want to expand. And so part of that is, what is your local value chain? Where are you procuring the timber and the wood that you need for this? Is that being done in a sustainable way? How are you a company, how are you going to replace the lost trees? And how will you even introduce tree planting initiatives within your broader estate as part of ticking the box, not just in a kind of symbolic manner, but in a substantial manner around your whole environmental policy? The second part of it is around conservation. Now, Lakaway Lakes is about 300 hectares. The golf part of it sits on about 90 hectares. And then the rest of it, the residential and hospitality, sits on about maybe almost another 80 to 90 hectares. And the rest of it is natural environment. There is a requirement to maintain a certain degree of natural environment for every unit or square meter of brick and mortar that we put up. And then the final aspect is really around the energy side of it. So the actual electrification and buildings. And one of the things, we started a process of IFC EDGE certification, not just on our residential part of it, but also on the hospitality and commercial side of it, so that we can tap into not just a single source of funding, but a diversified and blended mix of funding, which will hopefully bring down the overall servicing costs, debt servicing costs. So it's a really, really important part of our business model, but it also requires, from a corporate perspective, a re-engineering of your corporate culture. So when we talk about sustainability, it's one thing to get your physical asset and what you're producing or manufacturing into sustainable mode, but how do you then get the stakeholders to start thinking from a sustainability aspect? And I think that for me is really where a lot of the challenge is. And I think it's about every hospitality business sensitizing from top management down to the most junior level staff, the importance of sustainability and thinking through sustainability practices across your entire framework.